Somewhere along the way, exhaustion and constant availability became badges of honor in vet med. But what if doing good work isn't about pushing through, but knowing when to let go? Today, we explore rebuilding a life beyond vet med through boundaries and emotional regulation. Let's get started.
Hi, I'm Addie Reinhardt.
And I'm Ginger Templeton.
We're both vets who stepped out of full-time clinical practice, but we're still deeply rooted in the profession.
And this is Out of Practice, a podcast where we talk honestly about life in and out of vet med.
This podcast is brought to you by Mentor Vet.
Addie,
Hey,
what's up? How's it going?
It's pretty good. Currently working on defining veterinary well-being for the entire vet profession right now.
Good. That seems like a small task.
Yeah, it's been, I was glad to take a little break because I was starting to eyes go crossed with all the different definitions and the components and, things like that.
Why are you doing it? What is this for?
Oh, yeah. So this summer we met with kind of people across the industry for kind of well-being leaders to start to, come together as a group and get some shared direction. So that's what this kind of coming out of that meeting that was sponsored by Merck Animal Health, which there's going to be some more information forthcoming on all of this. But we are hoping to really start to hone in on some of the things that we talk about all the time, like veterinary well-being, and come to a shared consensus on these things. So it's exciting.
It sounds good. It sounds like a good, important project. It also sounds like an incredibly tedious way to spend the day before Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah. Just trying to get caught up. And I love Thanksgiving week because this is going to sound bad, but everybody goes on vacation between, Thanksgiving and Christmas. So it's like a really great time for me to catch up on projects that I've been wanting to work on for a while that just haven't had time because of the constant email.
I love it. I love it too. So moves, we get kind of quiet.
Mhm.
Most of our specialists will take a couple of days, a few days, if not the whole week, and it's exactly the same. I catch up. We start to get the stuff that always gets pushed to the bottom of the to-do list. So it's one of my favorite weeks for sure. Are you taking Friday off?
Let's see. Friday, I will be taking off. Yes. Thanksgiving was a little weird this year. My brother was in town a couple weeks ago, and so we ended up doing Thanksgiving early. So Thanksgiving kind of already happened for me. So it's going to be like a little mini holiday this year. So yeah, should be good. How about you?
Yeah, so I'm technically off on Friday. I think you and I are probably similar in that we tend to work when we want to work when we're off. And maybe we should talk about that. So I think people are always talking about work-life balance, boundaries, work-life integration. I think it's all a bunch of catchwords and catchphrases, and I don't think it necessarily has to be defined as right or wrong. But currently, for me, I really love my work, the actual day-to-day tedium.
Mm-hmm.
And so if there's a project and I'm off, quote unquote, I'm still probably going to work on it. What about you?
Yeah, I kind of go back and forth. I have and I think I need to probably sit down and actually map out how much I'm spending time on each thing just so I have awareness, because sometimes I don't know. And, I think because, I am the CEO of Mentor Vet, it kind of creates this wonderful, and also it's a double-edged sword, right? Where I can work whenever or I can not work whenever. And so, it might be a Tuesday, Wednesday where I'm not working, but then I may be working on Sunday, or, I'm feeling motivated to write this paper. So I get up on Saturday morning at 6 a.m. and I'm ready to go. But I don't know. But then I might take other time off different times. The only problem with that is that people generally tend to work Monday through Friday in a very
Yeah.
specific time. So I get a little stressed out if I'm, taking some time off middle of the week and my email inbox is just getting
Yep.
flooded with requests. I'm like, oh gosh, you people need to go away.
Yes,
Take a break.
yes, yes. No, same. It's out of control, like emails. And I think it's worth us talking because, name of the podcast, I think it's going to be Out of Practice. And you and I both are technically
Technically out of practice.
out of practice,
I mean,
which is
I am doing
not.
relief work, so
You
like
are.
1 day a week, so part-time.
So that counts. But I do think most of our listeners probably are going to be full-time or close to full-time,
Yes.
fairly traditional practice settings. And I remember thinking when I was in that world for 15 years, 12, whatever, thinking, oh, it would be amazing to be fully remote. It would be amazing to work from home. It would be amazing to have a non-clinical role. And it's always a yes and, like there is so much that's great about my current role and the roles that I've had other than this one that have been out of clinical. And also, there's something really lovely about showing up, working my ass off for 12 hours on the clinic floor, right? Getting all those records done, leaving, and being done, like
you can be
brushing
done.
my hands. And I did, like, it took a while to get there. I think if we have early career vets listening, especially, for me, it took a while to get to that stage where I really could leave it at work.
Yeah. How long did it take you?
Yeah,
How
it's a
many
good
years?
question. So I would say truly, it was probably in my 5th year of practice, somewhere around there, that I really felt truly disconnected when I left work. But I think it's also worth saying I worked at that. So I had 2 mentors who were incredibly helpful. The first one was the owner of my first practice. You've heard me talk about him before. Great mentor, great guy. And I didn't necessarily seek out his mentorship around that topic, but that's how he led the practice. He wanted his doctors to have vacation, have time away, and take it, really disconnect. And so even though my tendency was to kind of leave things undone, want to check in, feel mentally there, he really pushed me. And then I had a second practice owner, the second hospital. So basically my career in brick and mortar was 2 privately owned hospitals, 2 independently, veterinarian owned hospitals. And the owner at the time of that second hospital, her motivations were different. She very much wanted, I was being paid hourly at the time. And it was very much about, what my bring home pay was going to be if I was getting out of there earlier versus later. But she worked with me on getting my records done more efficiently and then ending my days more quickly and not having things lingering to the next day or the day after, even if I was still working, right? So that helped. But I had kids and, I hate to admit it, but for me, the motivation was very much when I was at home and my mind was at work, that wasn't good for my family and that aspect of my well-being. And I say I hate to admit it because so many people in vet med use kids or family to justify having boundaries and having balance. And honestly, everybody deserves it. Doesn't matter if you have kids, doesn't matter if you have, a significant other or something like that. Like you should still be able to work towards disconnecting. So all of that to say, it probably took me a good 5 years. But then for the next, 5-7 years, however long I was in brick and mortar, I was really regimented around getting my shit done and getting out of there.
Yeah. 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 I would say it took me about the same, probably about 5 years to feel 4 or 5 years to just leave it at work. And, I think especially with relief work now, it makes it even easier.
Sure.
If I'm working at different hospitals, I've even noticed like if I work at the same clinic 2 days in a row, it starts to stress me out because like, oh gosh, there's all this follow up that I have to do. There's something magical about relief work where you're just there and you got to get people through the day, and then when you leave, it's somebody else's problem.
It's somebody else's problem. So sorry to our listeners who are like the associates and owners who
we try
are
really
working
hard. That being
Yes,
said.
I've done relief, and it's true. And I do think also, there's the record piece, there's the efficiency piece, but there's also just the mindset piece. You can leave a relief shift and worry for 5 days about that patient, and I know vets who do. I've coached vets who do, and you can be an internist and have these patients that are yours forever, right? They are your train wrecks. You are going to have them forever. And you can still have that mindset of turning it off. And obviously, it takes a high level of emotional intelligence and intentionality to get there. But I think that's what everybody can be striving for. I think this idea that, like, I can't disconnect because I own the practice or because I'm the internist or whatever. I think it's a fallacy.
What helps you disconnect? I think both like when you were in practice and then also, now in your
Yeah.
current role.
Well, first, let me say it's been eye-opening to be in this current role. So, COO of a company, we're in 27 states, 26 states, something like that. We've got, I don't know, 60-ish veterinarians at this point. So, and each veterinarian is their own clinical team. So they're like a mini hospital, right? So it's a lot. Even though we're a small company, 150 people, whatever, it's still a lot.
Bigger than Mentor Vet.
Well, operationally, there are a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
And I'll admit, I haven't been as good at disconnecting. And part of that is, again, I really enjoy the work. And so most of the time, I'm not actively trying to disconnect, even if I'm on PTO, even if I'm taking some time away. But in the last probably 3 or 4 months, I've gotten a little bit more intentional about that because I have noticed, we all go through the ebbs and flows of burnout and stress and recognizing I don't want to find myself back in that place. But for clinical, I will say the most effective thing for me, 2 things. One was fully putting a bow on those medical records. Every medical record was as complete as it could be, and I could walk out of the clinic and know whoever was inheriting that, whether it was a technician who was just going to like call back on some basic like fecal result, or a doctor who was going to actually have to come in and see that very sick pet the next day for some follow-up. I knew it was as good as it could be. And then the other part is probably the most important, which is I really trained my brain. And a lot of that honestly came with therapy and coaching. So different professionals who I worked with over the years and reading and things like that, but literally training my brain to say, if I'm starting to think about a case or I'm starting to worry about, oh, did I do this or didn't I do that? Talking to myself discreetly, short sentences, Dr. Z is handling that case. He's got it. Something very simple like that. This isn't mine to worry about. Or focusing on what I was actually doing. And I think at Mentor Vet, we talk a lot about mindfulness and meditation. And I think in the world, like, if you haven't meditated, if you haven't trained your brain through mindfulness, it sounds like woo and it sounds kind of like BS, honestly, to a lot of people. But when you start practicing, you realize all mindfulness is bringing your brain back to the moment when it starts to worry or wander. And that's really helpful when your brain is starting to go try to spend time in a different place, like the clinical setting, when you're with your family or you're, trying to do something that's not work.
I love it. Yeah, I think for me, I think one of the things that has helped the most, I think both in practice and out too, is having something that I care about more than the thing that I'm doing in practice. And some of that comes with, I think, kind of on the last episode, kind of establishing those hobbies. And, for me, I can get completely lost in music and practicing. And when I'm practicing, I don't have time and space in my brain to think about anything else but what I'm doing. And like you mentioned that last time, moving my body often, and like yoga, I do yoga every day for at least probably like 10 or 15 minutes, just try to get some stretching done. And I find that if I'm, intentional on the mat and focused on my moving and my breathing, then I can kind of not think about the other things. I've lately noticed, like, I have my phone next to my mat and I'm like sending an email real quick or texting somebody back. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, set this thing away from here. Because, I think for those of you who are in practice, whether that be a technician or veterinarian, kind of fantasizing non-clinical careers, know that like the disconnect gets harder, I think, when you get out of practice, because there's no, like, especially if you're doing your own thing, but even not, like, if you're working from home, the boundaries get even more blurred with what is home, what is work, when is work, what am I doing? And so I
Yeah.
think for me, relief has been, and just going back into the clinic, I'm like, oh, this is a lot easier to disconnect than it is when I have my own thing and I'm like constantly thinking about mentor vet.
And I think that there is the ownership piece for you and I. So obviously, I am an executive at Moves. I'm not an owner. I mean, I own some shares, but I'm not anywhere close to being, our majority owner is our founder and their family. And so I'm not an owner, I'm not the founder, but there is still an ownership piece
Mhm.
as an executive. I think any executive is going to experience that. For you, I mean, I think being an owner founder is like really that highest level of attachment to the work. And I think we have a lot of people in the profession who experience a very similar thing if they're in an owner
Yeah.
capacity in their hospital. Even medical directors, I've worked as a coach with medical directors who feel that strong sense of this is my hospital.
Yep.
And so I think that is, on the one hand, that can be a very helpful mindset. It really holds us to a high standard. And I think we can get a lot of professional fulfillment when we have that type of stake in the work that we do. And it can be a liability if we let it go too far.
Yeah, I think it's really motivating at times, and it allows me to be productive and get a lot of work done because you are taking ownership in what you're doing. But then there's this other hand where, and I think you just mentioned this, it's like you're excited about the work and you want to do the work, but then you're also noticing maybe things starting to creep in, like the cynicism or the exhaustion, the I don't know. I
I'm
start to feel it at times too. What were you gonna say?
I'm going to throw in a, cynicism, exhaustion, but also a little bit of martyrdom. And I don't know if you've experienced this. I haven't actually observed this in you, but I do see leaders who start to think like, I'm the only one who can do this. I must do this. And first of all, that's not really an effective way to be a leader. I'm going to say I've done it. I've witnessed it in others. And certainly we want to be delegating and we want to be, aware that we're not the end all be all and the only one. But I do think that that is another, thing that can creep in where it becomes like we have to. And yeah, sure, there are some things that do fall to us as the person in charge, but I think a lot of that again is a false sense of I don't even know what the word is, but not trusting others to take things and not, passing things off effectively.
Yeah, I had to let go of the martyrdom a long time ago because I would have burnt out in like probably a year. And I think bringing full-time employees on, especially some of my first few employees, for a long time I was like holding on to all this responsibility and then realizing like, okay, if I'm gonna be sustainable in this role and I'm gonna be able to have time to do the things that I want to do or even grow mentor vet as a whole, I'm gonna have to let go of control. And I think the biggest piece of that was knowing that while it may not be done exactly how I want it to be done or done
Yeah.
perfectly, and I still have those moments where I see something and sorry, Jacob or Mariel, if you're listening, and like I might see you all do something and like, oh, that might not be exactly how I'm doing it or want to do it, but then I have to sit back and say, but hey, it got done, and did it hurt anybody that it didn't get done exactly how I wanted? No. Is it gonna make a huge difference? Probably not. So I have to just check myself and say, okay, like I think I can let this go.
I'm going to take it a step further. I do this all the time, right? So especially in this current role, I think I was much better about this in a clinical setting, probably because I really spent a lot of time trying to get there and I haven't done that in this role yet. But I do this to my clinical director all the time where she's brilliant. She's great ideas. And still I'm like, I'm like, oh, it's not how I would have done it. And of course I was in her role before I was in this role. So that makes it, I think, a little trickier. Whereas other directors that report in, I'm probably a little more flexible because one, they're not clinical, they're not veterinarians, and two, I wasn't in their role before this role. And so what I think we have to recognize is not only did it not kill anything, did not ruin anything, but that's where good ideas and innovation come from. Like if they're doing it and they're doing it differently, sure, sometimes we would have done it better. Not always. Sometimes they're going to have a different insight or a different idea. And the more they do that, the more potentially they're going to bring even better ideas. So, I mean, that is where innovation comes from, that psychological safety and our willingness to kind of let go of the perfectionism and let other people screw it up or not. But it's a lot easier to talk about it than to actually, for me at least,
Yeah.
implement it.
Just let it go. Like,
Just let it
let it
go.
go. Kind of like, the worrying about your cases. Just let it go. I had,
Be
oh my
fine.
gosh. So one of my main mentors right now and friends, I'll give a shout out to Dr. Andy Rourke. We were chatting one time about, and I was like really worried about something. And he's like, you know what? Sometimes, if I find myself really worried about something, I just choose not to be worried about it. And
Yes.
I started cracking up, and I was like, Andy, that is like the worst advice that you've ever given me. And I was like, but actually, you know what? I think we do have some choice over it. Like, I don't know, it's kind of like telling the anxious person, like, oh, just don't
Just
be
don't be
anxious,
anxious.
or the sad person, just don't be sad. And but I do think there are some, and to Andy's point, like, it did work really well for him, and he was able to let go of a lot. And I do think we have some agency and control, especially reaching back to the mindfulness piece of our thoughts and accepting those feelings, those like, okay, I am worried about this. Okay, now let's move on to the next thing.
So Addie, you and I always talk outside of, this setting about the really important line between mental health and the well-being space. And I think what you're talking about hits a really important crux. I know you're kind of joking about Andy just being like, "Oh, just don't worry.
Stop
I just didn't
worrying,
worry."
Addie. Just don't worry.
And I want to be a little sexist and be like, that's such a dude thing to say. But also hear me out, because honestly, the work that I've done over the last 5 to 10 years on my mind that has allowed me to disconnect, that has allowed me to not worry, has been very much recognizing how much control. And I don't want to say control like in a tight control kind of way. It's actually more of like a release, but how much of a choice we do have in our emotions and our thoughts. But it requires a lot of work, two, brain training. The work is training the brain. Some of that is mindfulness. And depending on individuals' mental health and their starting point, and I think even we have to think about neurodivergence in this as well. We really have to be careful if we're going to be in vet med in the well-being space, even in the communications and leadership development, those types of adjacent to well-being spaces, how we talk about this. And so you're right, like just as a layperson saying like, oh, don't worry about it, terrible advice. But at the same time, if there is somebody who feels they don't have that dial on their thoughts and on their emotions that they would like to have, and they think like, oh, I wish I could just not worry about something, that's where you find a good therapist and, CBT and getting that dial a little more fine-tuned. Maybe you're not ever going to just not worry about something, but maybe you'll surprise yourself.
Yeah, and I will say, I love, so Daniel Stillwell, who's the licensed marriage and family therapist on our team, does a lot of work with emotions and emotional intelligence. And I think something that he taught within the Mentor Vet curriculum, but also, to me, is thinking about the life cycle of an emotion. And I think a lot of
Yes.
people who get stuck in their emotions are stuck at a certain point of the life cycle of emotion. So essentially, I'm probably butchering this and not saying this correctly, but essentially you kind of recognize an emotion. So you notice that it's there. That's kind of the first step, is like noticing you're having emotions. A lot of people get stuck there, like not even knowing, what is this weird feeling I'm having in my body? What is this tension in my chest? What is this weird feeling in my throat? So noticing the emotion, and kind of recognizing it, and then noticing what it, like naming it. So, okay, that is fear, that is sadness, and being able to decipher what emotion it is, and then kind of understanding, okay, why is it here? What is it trying to tell me? Like that knock on the door, you're opening it, you're letting this visitor come into your house. Okay, what is the visitor trying to tell you? Like, oh, I'm afraid of losing this thing. I am sad about, the loss of this thing that I had before, or I'm worried that this thing will go away. Whatever it is that is trying to tell you, try to understand that emotion and what it's trying to tell you, and then thank it. Say, hey, thanks for telling me that. Thanks for telling me that I could die in this situation. That's for me like a big anxiety brain. So
Yes,
everything is resulting in death. So I'm like, okay, thanks, brain. I would have survived really, really well, back long time ago, because I would have said, everything is trying to kill me. So
But you would have never left the cave and gotten food. So
Yeah.
like let's
I don't know. I would have just been on hyper alert, hyper awareness. And then after you think and say, hey, thanks for telling me that, that's the point where you let it go. And I think some people get stuck on noticing what it is. Some people get stuck on, they are stuck in the recognizing, I'm sad, I'm sad, I'm sad, I'm sad, but they don't get to the, what are you trying to tell me? And then, the releasing part. And that's sometimes something that's also hard for me. So.
I think there are a few things in that I want to spend a little time on as well, because I love that approach. I love the life cycle of the emotion thought. I like to think of it as metabolism of the emotion. So letting that neurochemical, hormonal, whatever it is, process have its metabolic, endpoint, right? Let it run its course. But I also think we have to consider, is it going to be most effective for me as an individual, depending on how my brain and body works? And also, in this moment with this emotion, is it going to be more effective for me to take it to the cerebral? So kind of what you were describing was name it, recognize it, consider the why, thank it, let it go. And yes, sometimes I think that's going to work for people. I also think that many of us don't actually let the emotion just be there without judgment. And I think you're getting to that in a cerebral way. And I think in some cases we can get there in a physical way. And it's both of these are fine-tuned by mindfulness practice, but breathing into that emotion and just letting it be there, just letting it be. And moving forward, right? We can't just always stop and sit and meditate, right? Thinking on the clinical floor, but doing this in real time with our thoughts and with the physical sensations of it. And many times the stuck gets unstuck just because that emotion is meant to run its course physically and dissipate. And we hold on to it because we're not just being present and letting it be there. We're worrying about it. We're trying to do something with it. All of this, I think, to your point, is going to benefit, or is going to be benefited by working with somebody who is a professional.
Yeah.
So someone like Daniel, and somebody who that individual has a relationship with, where they can really look at, in this moment, what's the technique that's going to work best for me, and how can I do it in real time? To me, it's all about the practice, because when you're on the clinic floor and the client is yelling at you and the pet is obviously in a critical state, and the stress is building and the anxiety is building and the worry is building, how do you do it in that moment? Not just when you're sitting at home with your journal or sitting on a podcast, like talking about it in this very intellectual way.
Yeah. Okay. Big takeaway
Big takeaway is
from our chat for the listeners.
No, I'm with you. No, I was just going to say, we're supposed to be talking about life outside of vet med, and we started talking about being out of practice. And I think for me, and anybody listening, is life outside of vet med, there's no grass is greener, right? All of these things we're talking about apply in the clinics. They apply at work from home. They also apply in family, in social life, like all of the well-being stuff. If we can dial it in one facet of our life, it can spill over into every facet of our life. So again, grass isn't greener in clinical practice, outside of clinical practice. All of these skills have to be applied. And honestly, I should probably be doing some work on my own brain right now in this new role.
Yeah. And I would add, one more piece is that doing this work will allow you to have the life outside of practice.